everybody. Welcome to this episode of Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business, the one that answers why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. At WordWrite, we call this your capital S story because it rises above all the others to define the very character and nature of your organization. In every episode of Storylines Live, we bring on guests who have great lessons to share about storytelling that can help you and your organization do a better job of sharing your story. Today, another Chapters with Paul episode, which is actually Chapters with Tara and Paul, if I'm going to be accurate here.
Right.
Welcome, Tara. Tara DeRazio, our content manager.
Welcome, everybody. We are really going to dig into storytelling today.
We are.
We're going to talk about storytelling, how it relates to brands, and then, for listeners, what they can do to kind of integrate storytelling into their marketing efforts and kind of what that looks like for them. So I'm going to use my little cheat sheet for anyone watching on YouTube here. So let's talk about Apple.
Yes, let's.
Most people are familiar. You're either an Android or an Apple, but you're familiar either way.
Yes.
With these brands. In 2015, if you can believe it, they did the
10 years ago
Shot on iPhone campaign.
Yes.
Which, if people remember this, so it was the iPhone 6S at the time, which, now we're at, 13, I think, right now. I'm sorry for dating.
Actually,
this.
we're 16, 17 now.
Right, that's right, 16. I just turned in my 13. That's right, we're at 16.
Yeah.
So 10 years ago, it was the iPhone 6S, and they were looking for ways to promote this. And they did a lot of different parts of this campaign. So there was user-submitted photos where people could take it on their iPhone, submit to win prizes, using hashtags. They worked with influencers to shoot content only on iPhone, and they posted it on their channels. They also made a TV commercial fully shot on iPhone, and they did print ads, including billboards with showing the quality of the images through this. Mm-hmm. Impact of that, overall, 70 million interactions online with all of these things. Record high sales for the iPhone 6S. A recurring series, really, because they continued to do this, shot on iPhone,
Yes.
the next one was. And really keeping them on the, hey, we're on the cutting edge of technology, where our camera is, this is what our camera can do. And this is 10 years ago.
Yes.
So technology, obviously we've come a long way, but that was huge at that time to be able to do something like that from your phone. Do you remember this campaign?
I do, yeah.
Okay. Why do you think it worked so well?
Their great storytelling is as much about psychology, Tara, as it is about the concept of story. And a lot of times folks, business leaders, get wrapped around the concept of story. Here's the psychology. There's nothing that's more effective when you're selling a product than to show how people are using it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's an entire infomercial industry that's probably 60 or 70 years old that, kind of pioneered this in long form. And these commercials, the entire campaign, where you're looking at imagery that was shot on the iPhone says, wow, look what you can do with this. Regular people can make content with this phone.
Right. And I think getting their audience involved, they're kind of part of it. It's their campaign overall, but everyone really had a piece of it. There was ownership in that. And, that's something that we can talk about how that would relate to, listeners who have, I have a law firm or I have an accounting firm. How do I get people involved in doing things like that for me? Is that possible for companies like that? What are your thoughts there?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes. The older, let's call it the 70s and 80s version of marketing would say, a customer testimonial. Really, today, what works with video and social is a story.
Yeah.
And to the extent that you can share a story, you are going to increase engagement. And to the extent you're going to share a story that's actually told by the client that you helped, you're going to create even greater engagement. One of our law firm clients is actually doing this with talent and recruitment, and it's been very successful for them. They have a campaign going on right now where they have attorneys talk first person about why they like working at the firm. It's a LinkedIn campaign. Yeah. And it's produced a lot of leads for them in terms of potential hires, people who see lawyers just like them and how much they like working at this firm, and they think to themselves, I should check that out.
Yeah, and what that goes to show is that you don't have to have a product. There doesn't have to be this physical thing. It could be just like that, the culture of the company, or
it can be an experience.
Yeah, the origin of the company. There's a lot of places where stories can be told, so it's kind of figuring out where that fits for your organization.
Exactly.
Another brand that really did a lot with kind of user, had users come into their campaign was the Coca-Cola Share a Coke. So Coke sales were declining in 2011, and this actually started in Australia. They found that millennials weren't buying the product, so they wanted to come up with something, and they came up with Share a Coke. And this is putting names on cans, which you'll still see that today.
Yeah, you do.
Nicknames on cans, and this eventually went global. That 70 countries ended up doing this. It had a huge media buzz around it. Over 500,000 photos submitted from people. 800% website traffic went up. 1 billion impressions on social media over this, I think it was a 2-year campaign. $12.9 billion increase in sales.
Yeah, it's staggering, isn't it?
Why putting just someone's name on the can? What did that do? Why did that make such an impact?
Again, great marketing and great storytelling is so much about psychology.
Yeah.
One of the fundamental business and self-help books in empires was Dale Carnegie and How to Win Friends and Influence People. And one of his statements in his book is that the most pleasant sound in the world, the most important word in the world to any person is their own name. And I have literally seen people in a Target or a convenience store or whatever going through the bottles of Coke to look to find one that either has their name, their kid's name. I was shopping with one of our daughters not too long ago in the store, and my wife wanted a Coke. And my daughter just reached in and pulled out a bottle and had her name on it.
Yeah.
And I mean, just that experience, pulling the consumer into the story by literally sharing their name is so powerful.
Yeah, it seems simple, but it really was impactful, and that's the thing too. Not everything has to be a huge campaign or changing all of these things. It could be a simple shift or a language shift or a post on social media that could really resonate with people. We're all humans, and we all just want to connect with each other. I know in your book, you talk a lot about stories and how it's important. Back in the day, this is how information was shared before everyone was writing anything down. We're sitting around talking about stories, and our brains want to connect with people. We want to find that Coke that says someone's name and send it to them, or look what I made on my phone. So I think they do a really good job of these campaigns of just bringing people into it. So a lot of the clients that we work with, you don't have this massive advertising budget, and you may have to do things, maybe it's just you or a small in-house team. How can you effectively, where should you start, I guess? If you're trying to incorporate storytelling, where's a good place to start?
Well, and let's dig into that right after this quick break.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sure all of you have been waiting with bated breath to hear what we were going to share or see what we're going to share with you. I often say, and Tara kind of hinted at this before the spot, when the first person who started a fire on purpose figured out how to do it, and they explained it to the second person, I'm sure that a story was involved.
Right.
I mean, this is how we communicate. In my book and in our work, we have a lot of research to back up the physiology, the biology of how our brains work. This is how we retain information. So where you start is by going back to the very elemental story. Who is your hero? What's the problem you're trying to solve? What's the ideal outcome? And when you're talking about customers, it's very common to talk about your brand story. And that is certainly one kind of story. The example I gave earlier in this episode about the law firm, talent can also be an audience.
Yeah.
Investors can be an audience. Partners, neighbors, if you're a manufacturing company and you either have a facility in a neighborhood or you want to put one in a neighborhood. So the reason why I mention those other audiences is it's a little more sophisticated than simply saying, I'm going to use a story to tell somebody, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. When you're trying to engage an audience, and in addition to finding your capital S story, I was also co-author on another book called Ready, Connect, Grow. And my chapter in the book is called Your Story is a Diamond with Many Facets. And this is the point that I make in that chapter, that, sure, some people go to work for Nike because they want cool gear, but after a while, it's a job. And they're there for other reasons, right? So this facet of the story, just like a diamond that attracts employees or investors or partners, is different than the one that's going to attract customers. And this is why you need to go to your overall story, just like that gem. A diamond is a diamond, right? It does have different facets, but the story needs to be the same, because you want your employees to be sharing the story with customers. You want your customers maybe to be sharing it with people who could invest in your company or partner with it. We could go on. And as you mentioned, Tara, we do a lot of work with B2B companies, and this is critically important to reach those audiences as well as the audience that's going to buy your product or service.
Yeah, I'll play off your diamond analogy there. In different shapes of diamonds, right? There's different styles, different personalities.
Yes.
So your story, if you want to have humor infused in it, if you're uber professional, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. So I think everyone finding out kind of what kind of story you want to tell and then how you want to tell it.
Yes.
You can tell the same story a lot of different ways. And if you're in a group of friends and they're all having a memory, each one's going to remember it differently. So
and that's also a critical aspect of telling a good story, is recognizing that not everybody sees the story the same way.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So any lasting kind of takeaways as far as, you've been doing this for a long time, what are some impacts or just examples that you've really seen of how storytelling has maybe helped someone change the image of their brand, or, just give them something new out there?
Well, I'll give you an example that's in a way kind of related to what we talked about with Apple earlier. If you're into extreme sports or outdoor stuff, maybe you might know the GoPro brand of cameras. Well, during COVID, what were people not doing, right?
Yeah.
So this will kind of tie together a lot of the elements we talked about today. That team was willing to think differently, and they ran a contest for user-generated content. They'd had some history with this, because going back about the time of the Apple campaign we were talking about earlier, a firefighter in California had been wearing a GoPro on a call. It was a fire, and he went in and he rescued a kitten. And that got so many impressions that they put together later this campaign that I'm describing. Well, a lot of fun videos were created. One of them was a fella in his bedroom. He put the GoPro on the ceiling, and he wanted to go skiing. And he used a white bed sheet and his skis, and he camped on the mountainside and everything.
Yeah.
It was all on the floor of his bedroom, shot from the ceiling.
Yeah.
And so that kind of combines all the elements we've been talking about. It's user-generated content.
Yeah.
It's telling a story. It's using, in this case, the product to get it done. So I guess what I would say in sum about all this is it's helpful for any business, any organization, to look at how others are having success, and then ask yourself, how can we share our story in a way that breaks the typical rails or bounds of how we think we should share it?
Exactly. And if you need help figuring that out, or you want to talk to us about our story crafting process or all the things that we do here at WordWrite, send us a message, find us online. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you, and we hope that you learned a little bit more about storytelling today, and let us know if you have any examples you want to share with us.
Yeah,
We'd love
please.
to hear your feedback.
Yeah, please share in the comments on the episode any good examples you have. And thanks for joining us for this episode. We'll see you next time on Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business, the one that answers why somebody should buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you, your capital S story.